Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Beat, part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Torres. I'll be your host today. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at some interesting rest of season projections using the Bat X. We're also going to be talking injuries with Dave, bullpens with Mike, and as always, we'll be ending with our mental health minute. But let's bring in my co-hosts, Mike Carter, Dave Funnel. Fellas, I just got a notification. We're recording this on Thursday night. Jake Berger got demoted. So, we didn't have that as part of the show, obviously, but got to
Wow.
start there because that totally shocked me. I told you off air, I don't have him anywhere, so I wasn't paying like super close attention. But, looking at the numbers, yeah, he's been bad, but man, getting demoted, that's wild.
Wow.
So, any initial reactions to that?
I am surprised, but I'm not. He wasn't really that good this year. There were a lot of games where he was just not hitting the ball at all. And I know in the past he's gone through ups and downs. So I was always expecting him to have one of those hot streaks where he would just, hit three home runs in a week, but it just wasn't happening. But just looking online here, the plan is for him to get reset and return soon. Whatever that means, I don't know right now, but overall, I am pretty surprised.
Mike,
one
I
of
know
the
you were
things I
big
think,
on
yes,
Jake Berger heading into this year.
yeah,
We talked all in the offseason about him.
yeah. I thought he was 35 home run potential, and obviously we're going to have to temper those expectations now. But on the human side of story, he and his wife just had a second child, and the baby was born with Down syndrome. And I know that there's been some issues with getting her situated and having to have surgery. So I'm guessing on the human side of it, it probably weighed pretty heavily on Jake. Being a Chicago White Sox fan, he was always very invested in the community here and was a really just seemed like a really normal, regular guy like we are. So I'm rooting for him, and I will always root for him. But I'm hoping that it's a quick turnaround. They did call up someone named Blaine Krim, which almost sounds like a disease or something that you buy over the counter to counter the disease at the store. I'm guessing that Blaine Krim will probably not be long for the Texas Rangers world, unless he can close. Then maybe they can find a place for him.
All right. Well, we will get to that. We'll be talking the Texas bullpen, but yeah, interesting. He probably, I don't imagine he's going to be down there too long, and that's an interesting point, Mike, about the personal side of things, and maybe this was kind of a good mutual decision. I don't know, but just looking at rest of season projections, Bat X, which we'll talk more about, which is Derek Carty's system, which is, I think, usually the most accurate when it comes to hitters. They have him for 26 home runs, 71 RBIs, and a 245 average. Now, you're obviously going to have to take some off of that if he's going to miss some time in the majors. But just to give you an idea of the kind of player that Jake Berger is projected to be, and looking at the underlying stats here, yeah, he's having a bad year. He's batting 186. He's also got a 234 batting average on balls in play, which indicates he's been a little bit unlucky. 3 home runs, a 144 ISO, which is down from normal, but Berger is the type of guy, Dave, you mentioned, like, he'll hit 3 home runs in a week. Like, he could hit 3 home runs in a game, like, he's got that kind of power, and all of a sudden he's right on pace with where he's used to being. So the K rate's a little bit elevated, but nothing crazy. So I think it's a little bit of bad luck. Just could be some variance, just going through a tough stretch here. Yeah, just thought that was super interesting. Did not expect to see that notification.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's start out talking. I just want to check in with you guys, see where things are at in terms of your week with fantasy. So anything interesting this past week that's happened with your teams, or any recent developments? I'm going to start with you, Mike.
Well, the recent development is that most of my high profile teams stink, mostly due to injury. And I just can't, in those high leverage leagues, Tout Wars and Glarf, it is really hard to find waiver depth that can really take the place of somebody that you lose when you lose like an ace pitcher or lose a guy like Jackson Merrill. And I'm just scuffling along. I'm waiting for those guys to come back healthy and then see what I have. Usually by this point, I'm cutting cutting guys like a maniac, reshuffling the bottom of my roster. And I've kind of been waiting to see another week kind of what was going to happen. And we just kind of continue to scuffle on those teams. It's really been, I still feel like my draft process was good. It just was besieged by some injuries, which I know we'll talk about that more tonight, but that's kind of been what's going on with me. But the good news in all that is that the Batavia Bulldogs freshman baseball team continues to win games. We took 2 out of 3 in the series against Wheaton North this past week. So we're 12-3 going into a big weekend series with our biggest rival, Geneva, and our two pitchers, Easton and Lucas, both pitched unbelievable this week. Lucas pitched a complete game, 7-inning shutout on Tuesday night. He was fantastic. And my buddy Grant playing second base, fielding every ground ball, turning double plays. I've hit him probably 4,000 fungos in the last month, and he's really making a lot of progress and hitting the ball the other way. Just really proud of these guys. And they listen to the podcast, even though they don't play fantasy baseball. So I want to make sure that I gave them a shout out tonight before we got too far into it.
All right, let's go Batavia Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, man. So your fantasy teams aren't so hot, but you got the Batavia Bulldogs. It's all good. That's more important, honestly. All right, Dave, what about you, man? How's your fantasy week been?
This week for me is really testing my patience. Isn't
that always the case? Like, I feel like this game in general is always testing my patience.
This week especially, though, my home league, I'm in an Ottoneu league where power offensively really helps you out, and if you give up home runs as a pitcher, you are screwed. Now, for offense, I put my money where my mouth was. I really invested in the Rays offense, and they've gone ice cold. Brandon Lau has not done anything. Jonathan Aranda has not done much of anything, and I'm getting a lot of zeros and negatives this week. Not to mention that I've lost a lot of pitching, which I'll talk about later, but I've been trying to stack my team with relievers that will get Ks and will just an inning here or there, which will give me, a lot of points. But if you give up a home run, like I said, you get crushed. Tyler Holton, Garrett Whitlock, Craig Yoho today, and there was someone else earlier in the week. Rage cut after rage cut after rage cut. Just it's testing my patience. I know it's just May 1st, so I'll stick it out with my Rays, but yeah, just trying to remain positive. That's all.
Craig Yoho got lit up by the White Sox today, baby. 8-0. Big win for the White Sox. Up to 7 on the season. Up to 7.
Amazing.
Better than those Rockies.
Yeah, slightly.
The Rockies. Oh my God! Like they're starting to get national attention. I was watching PTI the other day, and they were actually talking about the Rockies, which they don't really talk that much baseball. But the Rockies are so bad that it's they may be worse than the White Sox of last year. I think they will be. I think they're going to have a finish with a worse record. It is looking bleak in Colorado. But for my teams, guys, believe it or not, I mentioned last week that my tout team has just been a disaster from start to finish or start to this point. I might win this week. I might actually get a win in tout this week. Now, for those of you who don't know, it's a head-to-head points league, which I have no experience with. And I mean, you guys know, like I'm not saying this to like look at me, but like I'm a pretty good player. Like I have a good track record playing in like the highest, or not the highest stakes, but like main event, and I've done really well. And I went to tout, and I didn't know I was going to get the head-to-head points league tout. But when I was asked to do it, I'm not going to turn it down just because it's that. So I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a try. I'm sure I could adapt. I haven't adapted. I have not. Part of it has been bad luck. All right. I've had, so two of my biggest players were Vlad Guerrero, which we know he's gotten off to a slow start, and Soto. Those are my, it was an auction league.
Yeah.
So I was spending like $40 each on those guys.
Yeah.
So when you have that combination as your two big players, this start has not been ideal. I also had Wilson Contreras, who he's heating up now, but was brutal those first couple weeks. So I've dug myself a hole here, but it's been a nice week. Kyle Stowers, 2 home runs for me. I picked up Andy Pajes. Had a really nice game from Carlos Rodon. Soto, 2 home runs today. So
good.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm well ahead in my matchup. If I lose this week, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. I've had some brutal, like, this is kind of weird. You had told me about this, Mike, afterwards, that, when you pick up a player, you have to start them that following week, which I was not aware of. So, like, I didn't know that in the beginning, and I'm wondering, like, why. Like, I picked up Porter Hodge one week because I figured, he's a good spec, Ryan Presley wasn't looking great. So I picked up Porter Hodge, and I had to have him in my lineup, and that was just kind of like a wasted roster spot,
right?
Because he wasn't the closer, so
right.
Just stuff like that, really frustrating, bad start, sit decisions. So it's been a tough go of it, but hoping that after this week I'm starting to get situated and can hopefully make a run here. But
there's something to be said about that too. Like when you're an experienced player like you are, excuse me, and a good player, you have to kind of weigh that out, right? Like you drafted guys for a reason and you thought those guys were going to be the ones that would carry your team. And just because they got off to a bad start for a month doesn't mean that you have to hit the panic button and start getting rid of guys that are stars. Because especially in a place like Tout, what do? You take Wilson Contreras and then he struggles. What are you going to do? Cut him and pick up Corey Lee? Like, I mean, you can't. You're not going to survive. Like, you can't do that, right? So you got to stick with your guys and you just hope that your process was good. I looked at your team several times while you were drafting it. I think your process was rock solid for that league. It just hasn't turned to the results yet, but I think it will.
I'm hoping, man. Yeah, I'm hoping. I got Acuna waiting in the wings here. He's on the IL. That's the other weird thing about this. So it's like the unlimited DL, which I probably should have taken even more advantage of. So yeah, it's just a different. I'm not used to that. Like with and here's the big learning curve too. Like I assume it's a 12-team league, so I assume, I could just pick people up off the waiver wire. Like there's going to be plenty out there. When you have unlimited IL though, it's not really, because I'm used to in NFBC, there's no IL, so people are stashing injured players, and as a result of that, the waiver wire is pretty plentiful, at least in a 12-team league. But when that's not the case in this league, I'm like, there's nobody. Like it feels like a 15-team league to me because the quality of the waiver wire is just awful. So that's been a little bit of an adjustment too. I thought like, I could skimp on outfield and there's always going to be people available. Not really, not really anything worth rostering. So we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated on that. But let's talk projections. And I mentioned earlier, we're going to look at the Bat X and kind of take a look at what I consider to be some interesting rest of season projections. Now, listen, I'm not saying projections are everything. Some people just strictly draft off of them. And for some people, I know some people that have been really successful doing that. There are others who say, man, projections are BS. I'm not going to use projections. I have my own system. All right, fine. I think that's a little misguided, but for some people that works too. I tend to be kind of in the middle. Like I use projections as my foundation. When in the off season, when I'm looking at a player for the first time, I always want to look at their projection first and just kind of get a sense of, all right, what is the general expectation for that player? And then I kind of go in and adjust based on factors that I consider to be important. And I'll take a deeper look at their skills, and I may disagree with projections, but I'm probably never going to veer too much off of them because I can't, these things have, there's a reason they, have people use them, right? They've shown to be effective. So yeah, that's just, I want to introduce the idea of projection. So I don't see them as gospel, but again, I see them as a good foundation. One thing that I tend to do though, is like, I kind of forget about projections during the season. And I don't
Mhm.
think that's really a smart thing to do either, because it's the same formula is being used, right? Like all of these
Mhm.
projection systems have a rest of season that they adjust based on, the inputs that they're seeing in the season. And I have this tendency to just like not even look at them. And that's what kind of got me thinking about this segment. I'm like, let's take a look. Let's see who the projections are reacting most to. What are they seeing? And maybe, that could give us a better sense of who are some buy low, some sell high players, and just kind of give us further guidance with that. And the way I did that, I have this program. It's called RotoChamp. I think it's it's a draft software. I think it's fantastic. And what it does is it has all the major projection systems, Steamer, BatX, ATC, and you just put in whichever one you want, and it gives you a ranking based on the projection of each player. And I find this really valuable just to be able to compare, where these players are relative to each other. And actually, what I was able to do is pull the preseason projection and then look at the ranking, compare it to the rest of season projection and see what the big differences were. So I'm going to start out with a couple players that really stood out to me, and I kind of grouped them together. I've got Tommy Edman. These are all projections that have really that have improved based on early season performance. So Tommy Edman, he went from 133rd overall based on the BatX to now his rest of season projection would make him the 63rd overall player. That one really stood out because I know there are people out there who are like, Tommy Edman's Tommy Edman. Like he's getting a little bit lucky with power, and BatX believes in Tommy Edman. I mean, that's a pretty significant jump, 70 spots based on this early sample. Another one who people are all over, as I feel like people are buying more into this, maybe because of the age, Pete Crow Armstrong went from 98th overall in the preseason to 53rd rest of season, according to the BatX. And then the other one was Cedric Mullins. And I don't have it in front of me. Oh, he was 111 to 64. So 111 in the preseason, 64th rest of season. So my question to you guys is, out of those three outfielders, who are you most interested? Who are you most buying into moving forward?
Before the season started, I remember when I was doing the Glarf draft up in Detroit at Comerica, and I was texting you guys because I had really gotten into studying Pete Crow Armstrong, and I thought, wow, this is a guy that could really, where he's going, could really help you, especially if he's able to hit it all, and he's hit really well, right? So he's already, a month into the season, got 6 home runs and 12 stolen bases, and looks like he's going to be an easy double guy there. He was somebody that I was high on before the season, and you guys really kind of egged me on, and I took him a little bit sooner than I probably was planning on doing, but I'm really glad that I did because he's anchoring my outfield right now. Of those guys, I think he is the one that has the best chance of remaining, especially because he's going to play the most. I mean, they don't really have another option to play center. He's so good in center, and he can fly. I just don't see them, even if he starts to slump a little offensively, I don't see him sitting. And that's, to me, I think that's one thing that we don't consider enough when we're considering fantasy players is, if you're a guy like Cedar Rafael is a great example, right? Like he's probably going to get double-digit home runs and double-digit steals, but he might hit 220. But he's going to play because the guy's defense is superior. And so they're going to have him out there. Everybody's talking about Roman Anthony. When's Roman Anthony coming to replace him? Probably not. You know what I mean? So like somebody else will probably get moved in that situation before they bring Anthony up. So you got to consider that piece of it. I love PCA. I think he's a great player.
All right. PCA for Mike. What about you? What about you, Dave?
I like PCA too, but for this, I think I'm going to take Tommy Edman. Now, I was looking back at his stats when he was with the Cardinals, and he had this was his 162 game average with the Cardinals. 14 home runs, 29 stolen bases, 265 average. Since becoming a Dodger, his 162 game average, it's not going to continue, but it's 34 home runs, 19 steals, 244 batting average. The difference that I saw was I think the Dodgers may have fixed his swing. He's got a better launch angle. So other than his rookie year where it was 14.2 degrees, with the Cardinals, it had ranged from 7.5 to 9.5 degrees. Last year with the Dodgers, it went up to 11.4 degrees, and this year it's at 15. Mm-hmm. I think what's helping him, not just with the swing, but it's also because I think he's seeing more pitches in the zone. He's part of a better lineup. My guess is that he's going to see more pitches, and because the other guys are already on base, I think he's going to do well. I think he's going to keep up. I don't think he'll keep up the power, but I think he'll hit for more power than he ever did with the Cardinals. I love his versatility in the field. I love his eligibility. So I'm taking Tommy Edman.
All right. Interesting with Edman. So I think people just assume, yeah, he's just gotten off to a hot start, gotten a little lucky. In terms of the luck, I mean, his batting average on balls in play is 227, which is well below average. His expected batting average, which I know people are kind of like, you can't really use the StatCast expected. I mean, it's something. It's a data point, right? We're not saying it's gospel either. But his expected batting average is 312 compared to a 252 actual batting average he has right now. His expected slugging percentage, 574, 520. It's an actual slugging percentage of 523. So really interesting. I mean, he may actually get better. And I mean, he only has 2 stolen bases right now. I have to imagine that's just kind of variance. Dave, I know you follow the team trends. I mean, the Dodgers aren't like as a team, there's nothing that indicates like they're not running, right? I mean, I'm not missing something there.
I'd have to look up the totals of what they're doing, but you're right. Like Ohtani's not running as well. I don't think Betts is either. I think
so you're saying there is maybe as a team, maybe they're slowing down a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, and I think they're relying more on the batter's ability to get on base so they don't have to risk running.
Okay. All right, maybe that's possible. Maybe, Edman is more of a 10 to 15 steal guy. We know he's capable of more than that. I mean, I think in the past he's been more of a 25 to 30 stolen base player, but I mean, if the stolen bases kick in, then he's just a fantasy stud. So I'm with you on Edman. Pete Crow Armstrong, I had doubts about the actual like hitting ability. The guy doesn't walk, right? He's got a major chase rate, a swing percentage of 47% this season, but some dudes make it work, especially when you have that level of athleticism. Like you can get by. Look at Javi Baez for years, had an swing like that. And he was just so athletic, it didn't matter. Luis Robert was the same way early on. And I think as these guys age, you kind of have to worry a little bit more about their the sustainability of that. But, I think there's not really too much concern with PCA right now. And Mullins, man, I just got to say a quick thing on Mullins. I went back and looked because I remember he was going late in drafts, and I didn't get any, unfortunately. His ADP was around 215 this season. And I'm kicking myself because I use this draft software, right, that ranks all of these players. And even preseason, based on his preseason projection, he was ranked as the 111th player. So you were essentially getting 100 picks of value taking Cedric Mullins at his ADP this year. So, part of me was like, there's so many so many outfielders in Baltimore. Like, are they going to give him enough playing time? I mean, yeah, he's going to sit against some lefties, but man, just that power speed combo that he has. And this was somebody that we were taking in the top 50 a few years ago. So that's another thing. I think another lesson to learn. Like, if someone was a top 50 player at one, like in the recent past, we probably shouldn't let them fall as far as Mullins did this offseason.
Yeah. Interesting thing I just wanted to point out to you guys about Tommy Edman. He did not play today. and it was due to an ankle injury. So I wonder if maybe if he's got a little bit of a banged up ankle, I wonder if that's maybe why he's not running, even though he could still play. Sonia Chen reported today that he's day-to-day, but then again, aren't we all?
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for that. All right. Two other hitters that I wanted to point out their rest of season projection. Tyler Soderstrom. Now, this is someone who is, I know there were people predicting like a big season from him. There were some prominent Twitter accounts I saw that from. There were still questions, though. Like, is this guy, like, he could very easily end up in the minor leagues. BATX did not believe preseason. They had him 367th overall based on his projection. They now have him. This was probably the biggest jump that I saw among hitters. 168th overall based on his rest of season projection. So they are a believer in Tyler Soderstrom. Just trying to pull up here the actual projection, just so you know kind of what they're expecting. And I pulled up the wrong one. Let's go to Pete Alonso, because I thought he was pretty interesting too. Only jumped from 53 to 39, but what really stood out to me was the difference in batting average. They had him projected preseason for a 239 batting average, and now that is up to 253. And I think that, I mean, you could see it in the skills. He's only striking out at this point 14.6% of the time. Yeah. Contact rate up to 78%. I mean, when you combine that improved contact and that improved hit tool with, obviously we know about the raw power, I mean, you've got a fantasy superstar. So I was skeptical of Alonso heading into the season, but I mean, right now, I think where would you say if we drafted today, is he a early second rounder?
That could be.
I mean, he's definitely in the second round, I think. You know, I think he's putting together a career year. And I think part of it is just knowing he doesn't have to carry the load. I know, you know, Soto hasn't really lived up to the billing yet, but I think just having less pressure, you could just see it in him. He's not pressing as much. And I think we're going to see just a career year from him. And just getting back to Soderstrom, I did finally find his rest of season projection, 22 home runs with a 246 average. So not a world beater in that category, but I think as far as power, you could expect that he's going to be a really solid asset. We're going to talk about some pitchers in a minute here, but first we are going to take a quick commercial break. All right. So we are here to discuss some pitchers who we think have some interesting rest of season projections. Again, this is using the BATX. And let's start out with Hunter Brown. Hunter Brown, based on his preseason projection, was the 107th overall player according to the BATX. He is now up to 50th rest of season. Do you guys have any Hunter Brown? And I hope you do, because I'm sure your teams are reaping the benefits. You guys have any shares of him?
I wish I did, but I do not. No,
I have several. And one of them was I was lucky because it was a keeper league, and I kept him from last year, hoping, not expecting, hoping that he would be able to replicate what he did last year, because I thought he was fantastic in the second half. I mean, he started the season 0-4, and then ended up going 11-9 with 3.5 ERA, 179 strikeouts, 170 innings. He's looked even better than that. The StatCast is blood red. K- walk is like 24. I mean, he's just been really, really good. And I'm thrilled to have him. Unfortunately, I also have Yusei Kikuchi on that team, so that hasn't gone as well as what I would have liked. But Hunter Brown is definitely outstanding.
Yep. All right. So I think a little bit more reason to believe in his start, and that this is a legit step forward and not just some early season variance. Another player that I think fits under that description is Mackenzie Gore, going from 210th to 103rd based on his rest of season projection. So I think we're seeing an uptick in the strikeout stuff. I think a little bit shaky still with the ratios. And, you know, Gore has never been like a low whip pitcher, but I think we're seeing a legitimate step forward. Where do you guys think? I mean, is he a top 25 pitcher for you guys, or do you think he's still outside of that?
He's not quite there yet for me, but he will be if he can avoid the midseason struggles that he's prone to.
Mhm.
Now, I know last year he said the coaching staff really helped him regain his form and endure over a long stretch of a season. So I think that's what was happening for him last year and the year before, when he just had that slide where he couldn't maintain, what he was doing. So if he learned from his past and he can continue doing what he's doing, he will be.
Mhm.
But I need to see. I am expecting him to have some sort of a slide. But if I'm wrong about that, then yeah, definitely he's up there for me.
Yep. All right, let's talk about him, man. You say Kikuchi, you mentioned him, Mike. It has been really, really ugly for him. Yeah, I'm thinking honestly, like he's pitching tonight, and he's pitching tonight against the Tigers, and in a 12-team league, we'll see how he does. Unless he comes out and just shoves, I don't even think he's rosterable at this point. He's got a 20% K percentage with a 13% walk percentage. For those of you who are who need assistance with the math part of that, 7% K minus walk, which is not good. A 4.84 Sierra, and the bat X has really, really dinged him based on the early season skills that he's shown. He started out 151st preseason, has gone all the way down to 253rd. So again, there's nothing to latch onto with Kikuchi. I don't even know. Like, I have him on a couple 15-teamers. I actually benched him in a few spots, even in a 15-teamer home against Detroit, because I just don't see anything that's indicating turnaround. And let me just say, man, the Angels suck. They suck they are right behind there. I told this to you, like, in the offseason, Rockies, Angels, and White Sox, I feel like, are all in that same group. Like, there is a battle between the three of those teams to see who can be the most incompetent organization. And I know many people were upset, like, when Kikuchi signed with the Angels, and I was like, nah, I don't know. Maybe he'll just carry over what he learned from Houston. No, I think the Angels just, everything they touch goes to crap. So
yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because last year, what Houston did when they got him was they said, we're going to focus less on your four seam. We're going to throw your slider more. And you would think that, having success with that, you'd say, well, maybe I'll just carry that over to the next team and see if that works for me. He hasn't done it.
No.
Look at the stats. Look at the numbers. It's crazy.
You know what's amazing too, man? And this is a bigger conversation, but it's like a team like the Angels. Like, they have no clue what they're doing with in baseball ops, with their general manager. Like, they're in the dark ages. But it's like the stuff that Houston did with Kikuchi, it's not rocket science, right? Like, a lot of these teams, like we say, that are like really advanced with their pitching programs, like, it's pretty much the same thing. Like, hey, throw your best pitch more. Why don't you try that? And it's like the light bulb goes on when someone tells a pitcher that. I don't get it. Why more teams just aren't able? Like, it seems simple. I know it's not really that simple, but like, I'm just amazed that some of these organizations just have not caught on to some of these trends and are unable to get the best out of their players. That's a different conversation. But two other players I just wanted to touch on. Dylan Cease, his rest of season projection was interesting to me because it was exactly the same as it was preseason. 32nd overall preseason, 32nd overall rest of season. So my advice to you, keep the faith with Dylan Cease. I know it's been a rough start, but everything indicates this is pretty much the same pitcher. And all the underlying skills just indicate that he's been pretty unlucky so far. So
yeah,
I still think he's a top 15 pitcher. He's not going to be perfect, right? He's not a tier 1 ace, but I think he's firmly in that tier 2.
388 BABIP too, by the way.
Oh,
yeah,
right. BABIP is high, and he's got an xERA. I know we're talking about expected stats, whatever, but it's 2 runs lower than what his ERA is right now, 3.84.
Yeah, so I think Dylan Cease is going to be fine. And one last player I wanted to point out, I know this is our guy. We've talked about him offline. I think we all have plenty of shares of Chris Bubich.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, I was hoping I was going to look at the projection and that the system would be buying in based on what we've seen so far. Still only ranks him 271st overall. So it's a little bit of a bump from where he was preseason, but still, he's around other pitchers that really aren't guys that you would be too confident in. So, in a 15, obviously you're rostering Chris Bubich, or, like he's going to be probably one of your top 5 pitchers. But in a 12, I think is someone to be kind of cautious with and pick your spots, because I don't know if what we've seen so far is necessarily an indication of him taking some huge step forward, and the projections agree. All right, we're going to transition to our next segment. We're going to talk about injuries with Dave. I don't think we're going to have time to do both of these, Dave, but let's talk about let me ask you about your teams and some injuries. You alluded to it earlier, Mike, about you've been ravaged by injuries in some of your biggest leagues. Tell us about them, and maybe if you have any insight into some of these players, and hopefully you can give Mike some good news on them.
Well, in TGFBI, my ace co-anchors were Cole and Kirby. Obviously, that's not working out so well right now. Although it sounds like Kirby might be on the comeback trail, but I'll have to listen to what Dave has to say about that. But in Tout Wars, I built my pitching staff around Logan Gilbert. Jackson Merrill is out and looks like he's going to miss more time. Josh Lowe was one of my outfielders, and Zach Eflin. Just like you said before, Chris, there's just no replacing those guys on the waiver wire and tout. I mean, there is zero depth on the waiver wire. And when you're sitting there, wondering if you should roster Andre Pallant to, replace Logan Gilbert.
I've been there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real, it's a real problem. I mean, it makes you feel really sick to your stomach and ill at will, but that's what it is. So I really don't have much choice other than to wait and, have those guys come back and try to fill in and get some innings and get some at-bats while we're doing it. But I really need to get those guys back.
Any updates on any of those players? Gilbert, Merrill, Josh Lowe, Eflin, anything notable, Dave?
Yeah. Well, with Kirby, he just threw a bullpen or a live bullpen, and he's going to do it again this Sunday. So once he does that, we'll see. He'll get more of a timeline set out of what's going to happen. He says he feels good, but we just don't know the velo and what pitches were being done. Logan Gilbert, grade 1 flexor strain. He won't throw for 2 weeks as of the injury. It's mild, and it's usually 1 to 3 weeks for a mild flexor strain anyways. But the only thing is there's a lot of wear and tear on that arm. He's got 734 innings over 4+ years, which is a lot of work. So it is worrisome. I think they'll take their time with them because he is such a major part of their rotation. Jackson Merrill, the Padres, they really don't want him to get hurt again. A lot of what they're doing is precautionary. They're worried that if he gets hit by a pitch or, a commotion or something, they're really planning for October right now. They're trying a lot of their injuries. The Padres try and get ahead of it. They keep saying we're trying to get ahead of it. So he's going to be slow. I don't think it's going to be something like Kyle Tucker last year where it extended for months and months and months. I think he will be back at some point in May. Mm-hmm. And Zach Eflin, with him, you just got to worry about there's always going to be an injury, but he usually does bounce back, and he should be back, I want to say, by the end of May. Yeah, so I think things are going to be okay for you, but it's always tough in the meantime when you're just sitting there and you've got nothing going and you're wondering, what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
But
and I know you've you had quite a few Kirby shares, and you're a guy like you're the injury guy, so you're always thinking about this, and I think you're always trying to, or at least mostly trying to play it safe from what I see. And Kirby was someone who, if you ask somebody preseason who is the safest pitcher on the board, 80% of people would probably say George Kirby. So that's, I know you've lost him, and you also lost Justin Steele, and you noted here there was a lesson that you learned with that one specifically.
Yeah, for Justin Steele, it was a lesson learned in that I want to really take note this September about pitchers who come back for 1 or 2 starts.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see what they're doing. I want to see the situation that they're in. Because I remember Justin Steele came back last year and the numbers in the box score looked good, but it always felt like he was rushed back. And when players get injured by the end of the year, it's always difficult to anticipate when they would have come back if it was in the middle of the season. I know the Cubs were near the end still trying to make the playoffs, so I don't know if he was rushed back just to pitch. And I don't know if that did any more damage. So that's a lesson learned of just once we get to the end of the season, understanding what the situation is, why they're there, what they're doing, and then maybe project that for the next season. Because a lot of times, beginning of the year of the next season is when those unresolved injuries come back to haunt you.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few guys like that this year. Players that I avoided. Steele, for that reason, was one of them. Hunter Green was someone that I also avoided, because he had that injury at the end of last season, came back for, I believe, 1 start. And I'm like, is he fully recovered from whatever that was? And he also throws, 98, 99 miles per hour. So far, that's worked out great, and we'll see if he can sustain that. I have my doubts based on his velocity and, again, the injury that he dealt with last year. But I don't know. Do we know anything? This is another long conversation that we could, I guess, save for another day. But it's really maddening,
Yes.
how there's really no, we could say, oh, look at this, look at that. But really, it's just kind of a crapshoot,
Yeah, there's simply no way of knowing, guys.
Yeah,
it's a game. I mean, there is luck involved in this, right? I mean, the teams that you look at that you've had that have won, what is the one thing that they've had in common? Probably mostly, you hit on a couple of guys that nobody else was expecting to have play well, and you're healthy. You're getting at bats and you're getting innings. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, one guy that in my one main event, I have Strider and Logan Gilbert. So it's been a rough couple weeks. Still holding water, thankfully. I don't know how. But tell me about Strider. When do you think we could expect to see him back?
He's going to be gone for a bit. He's going to get a there's going to be a timeline for him after a couple of weeks. So he went on the IL, what was it, about a week ago or so? Mm-hmm. So we're going to wait for another week or so and then see how he's doing. But like I said, I think I said it last week, it's really tough when it's the hamstring because you can't really pitch with it.
And he's really going to have to ramp back up. I mean, are we looking at June, middle of June, best case scenario at this point?
We might be, only because he was off for so long. I don't want to say he was rushed back, but he really progressed quite well without any setbacks, really. So he was able to do that. He came back, he pitched, and now he's got to sit out and just wait again. And I don't know what that's going to do to his arm, just not being able to throw. I'm sure he's going to do some exercises. So it's not like he's just going to sit there for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But he might need a ramp up with 1 or 2 starts on the 1 or 2 rehab starts. So You're right. It could be June or close to it.
Yeah. Super frustrating. And usually I don't take those guys coming off of Tommy. I know he didn't have Tommy John. He had the brace procedure, but after missing a full season like that. And I don't know. I took the plunge. I had that FOMO in my last draft and I'm like, I need Strider. He was looking, he was progressing so well. And I'm like, I need a share. And I went against my usual way of doing things. And that really came back to bite me. Another guy in that realm is Sandy Alcantara. And I know he's not injured right now, but he's been really ineffective. So, again, it kind of confirms that, like, I know Dave McDonald, who we've had on the show, has talked about this, like staying away from these pitchers who are coming off a season-long injury. I know Dave McDonald talks about staying away from hard throwers, right? And staying away from guys who are coming off of, of major injuries. Unfortunately, though, it just doesn't seem like you leave too much of the pool open to yourself. I'm like, who do you draft? And I'm not taking shots at Dave. Like he's a very good player. And I know, he has his way of doing things, but it almost like, I don't know, like the player pool really does become narrow. And maybe that's what you got to do. Maybe it's just like, all right, this is the red flag. He's off the board, and you just kind of got to approach it. Like, these are the guys who, throw less than 95, but are still really good. Don't have major injury track records. There's probably like 3 of those, but you get all
watch
shares
because he increased his velo. Oh, now that's a bad thing now.
Right,
too. You can't have that. So they've got to be the exact same that they were within this kind of parameter, and if they exceed it or they go below it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's like 3 guys.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway,
man. All right, let's transition from injuries. Let's talk something else that's just as maddening, if not more. Let's talk bullpens. So I know we talked about Clase last week. You talked last week about adding Cade Smith. It looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, looks like Clase has righted the ship a little bit. He's gotten the past few opportunities here in Cleveland, and I would imagine Cade Smith is someone you still roster, right, if you have Clase, but maybe things are kind of going back to the way they were. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Clase last week had a really bad week, and I think you're still watching the situation, but since last Sunday, he's had a hold, a win, and a save. Last night he got a save, came in and pitched the 9th, pitched great. He got 3 strikeouts, didn't give up anything. Cade Smith ended up getting the win in that one. So I think Smith is definitely a guy that's worth rostering just as that handcuff, especially if Clase is not 100% healthy, which is, a bit of a concern. I mean, there's been some whispers about shoulder woes. Even though he looks like he might be over that right now, that could pop up again at any time. Smith is a really valuable guy to have on your team. He's a 32% strikeout rate. He's got 7 holds if you're in a holds league. He's also got 3 saves and a 1.15 ERA. So definitely a guy that can help you attack those ratios and the strikeouts. And I think would end up being the closer if Clase had to miss time. A lot of people like Hunter Gaddis too. He's got an even higher strikeout rate. He's got 9 holds, but it seems like Stephen Vogt really likes him in that 8th inning role, and that Smith is a guy that he can kind of call on to do multiple things. So my guess would be, Clase is back for now, and Smith would be a guy to hold on to. If something should happen to Clase, I think it would be Smith.
Mm-hmm. You had Kyle Finnegan down on here.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even really paying attention, but he's blown 2 straight. And at this point, I'm just like, Kyle Finnegan is a safe guy. But like, I know, like, since last year, I was like, Kyle Finnegan stinks. Like, he's not, like, why is he a closer? It worked out. Anybody who took a chance on him last year got a ton of saves. I don't think the ratios were great. But then here he is again, back in Washington after people thought, he got non-tendered and people like, that's the end of Kyle Finnegan. No, he's back. And signs with Washington, started out strong, but blown 2 straight. I mean, I think it's going to take quite a bit for him to lose the job based on the cachet that he's built up there. But if he did, and he also might be a trade candidate in July, who would be the person to replace him? Or are we looking at, just a mishmash of guys?
Well, if you look at the guys that they're using for setup roles right now with Jose Ferrer and Jorge Lopez, they both have ERAs over 7 and strikeout rates of less than 20. So that's not guys that you want to look at for closing. They have Lucas Sims there, but he's been equally as bad and has never really been able to wrestle that mantle of being the closer. They did just get Andrew Chafin. Speaking of
just add him to the mix,
old crusty veterans, but they don't really have a lot to look at there. Jackson Rutledge has pitched well for them in middle relief, which is something that I don't know that anybody was expecting, but he seems to kind of be moving up the ranks a little bit. So Rutledge might be a name to file for later. I'm not endorsing him as a closer. I'm just saying that he could be a guy that could get into the mix because he's really been their only effective reliever besides Finnegan. I do think Finnegan's got a relatively long leash here just because of the fact that they don't really have anybody else around that can really challenge him at this point.
Mm-hmm. What about Cincinnati? You've been a Graham Ashcraft guy for as long as I've known you. I know Pagan's been there. He's done well. Anybody who invested in him has got to be happy. You know, anything at this point extra from Pagan, I think is just gravy. You know, he's already gotten 8 or 9 saves.
Yes. Alexis
Diaz got demoted, so it looks like he's out of the picture. Do you think Graham Ashcraft eventually takes that job?
Boy, this is a really interesting one to talk about, and it really kind of excites me because you have 3 guys that have all been in the mix that have all pitched really well. Pagan has really been a savior for them. One thing that Terry Francona is fantastic at, and he's fantastic at many things. He's one of the best managers to ever do it, but he just gets the most out of these guys in his bullpen. He always has. And so he's got 8 saves out of Pagan with a 2.51 ERA and a 28% strikeout rate for Emilio Pagan. Like, what is going on? That just doesn't even make any sense. But Tony Santillan has also been good. But Graham Ashcraft, man, you know that I've always been a big Ashcraft guy. I actually was talking about that a few years ago, and I can't take the only credit for it. I talked about it with Eno Saris a few times when we were down in Arizona about Ashcraft and why I thought he would be a great closer. If you look at his StatCast, it's pretty wild. His strikeout rate isn't very high. He's got an incredible chase percentage in the 98th percentile, and his average exit velocity is in the 100th percentile. So he's limiting hard contact. He gets a ton of ground ball. He's got a 67% ground ball percentage, focusing on a cutter and a slider. And I know some guys, there are some starters that can get away with having 2 pitches. He's not one of them. But this mix works really, really good in the bullpen. And you know that Francona always likes having that guy that he can use for a couple of innings. Ashcraft, at the very least, can fill that role. I think people are going to shy away from him a little bit because they don't see the big volume of strikeouts there. But he's been really, really effective. The one thing you got to watch with Ashcraft is the walks, right? I mean, his whips have always been historically high. His walk rate right now is like 13%, which is not great, but everything else has looked really, really good. So I think Ashcraft is a guy who definitely could sneak into that mix. I don't know what's going to happen with Alexis Diaz. They also have Scott Barlow and Taylor Rogers who have experience closing, but it really seems like they're best suited in a middle relief role. I think Ashcraft, if Pagan struggles, I think Ashcraft gets first crack before Santillan.
Tell me about Texas. Is the Luke Jackson era finally, mercifully over?
Chris, what do you want me to tell you here? Do you want me to lie to you, or do you want me?
Lie to me if you have to, for sure. Because I want it to be. I was so upset, man. Like, you know it. We talked about
I remember.
Chris Martin. And that was like, I identify Chris Martin. Like, this guy is going too late. You know, I'm like, Texas didn't bring in anybody. They're, a pretty good team. Like, there'll be plenty of save opportunities. He's kind of like the Kirby Yates of this year. The veteran guy, they kind of get off the scrap heap and he gives you 30 to 35 saves with pretty good ratios.
Right.
And then the day, I think it was opening day eve, it comes out that Luke Jackson, who I honestly didn't even know was still in Major League Baseball. I didn't even know he was on the Texas Rangers.
Right.
Luke Jackson was the leader to be the closer. And then I'm like, Luke, no, that can't be right. Oh, maybe they just wanted to get him work in that final spring training game. These people are crazy. Luke Jackson. Bruce Bochy's not going to take a guy. Like, this is a win now team. Well, they're not going to take this guy, put him in the closer role. No, they put him in the closer role. And then I said, you know what? There's no way. Luke Jackson is so bad that it's like he's going to last for 2 games and it'll be Chris Martin because there's no way he could hold it. Well, Luke Jackson held it, and now he has like 8 or 9 saves. And, it's just driving me nuts because we know this can't last. I mean, this guy's not a good pitcher. Anybody, like with Pagan, if you invested in Luke Jackson, you've already gotten, I think, a good return on your investment.
Right, exactly.
He's been struggling. I mean, the whip now, I think, is like, 1.5. He had a really rough outing yesterday.
Yes.
So all of that to say, can you please just tell me it's over?
Yeah, I would think that it is. I mean, the problem that they have though is that Jackson got the last save there, I think, on Sunday, and they've had 3 bullpen losses since then. One of which was him, one of which was Robert Garcia, and one of which was Jacob Webb. Boy, oh boy, it's a pretty ugly scene here. I mean, my best guess would be that Chris Martin would be the next guy up in this situation. Even though it does appear that Bochy likes to really use him and Garcia as his top setup guys. But you look up and down the roster, you just don't see anybody there that can really kind of ascend to that position. We had talked a little bit off air about Emiliano Teodo, but he is hurt down in AAA, and his walk rate is about 15 to 16%. So that is not a solution that's coming for them. So my guess would be that when it's said and done, that Martin would be the next guy up in that situation. Garcia is lefty. I know that there's a lot of people out there that don't believe or like the idea of having a left-handed closer, and he's been really effective in the role that he's been in. So I think that Luke Jackson will probably get bumped back down to a middle relief role. He was actually relatively successful in that role last year for the Giants. But Bochy, Bochy's kind of a weird guy. He does a lot of things by feel and keeps guys in roles. And he also doesn't, if you look back at him historically, he likes to have one guy be the closer, but he historically doesn't value the closer as much as he values his setup guys. His feeling is kind of like, well, anybody can get the last 3 outs, which throws a lot of people off when we're talking about getting saves. But I think if you've invested in Jackson, you got your 8 saves, it's probably coming to an end. He's had 2 really, really bad outings this year where he gave up multiple runs, and one of those was yesterday. And so the question of what have you done for me lately? Texas has gotten off to a 16-10 start, and they haven't won in a week. So probably need to do a little bit of shaking up there.
Yeah, I mean they did that with their, obviously the burger move that we talked about, and I know Bochy's been messing with the lineup a little bit, so they're searching for something to try to find a spark. I don't think, obviously, if you have Jackson, you hold and see how this plays out. It may just be me wish casting, and maybe Bochy surprises us and just sticks with, he does seem to be very invested in this. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but hopefully when we talk next week, we'll be talking about Chris Martin, Texas Rangers closer. We are going to leave it there for baseball stuff, at least. We'll be back with our mental health minute, but first we're going to take a quick commercial break. All right, we are back for our mental health minute, and today's topic, and for those of you who may be listening for the first time, this is where we move away from baseball and we talk about mental health related topics, sometimes delving into physical health, but basically just ways in which we can improve our overall wellness. So last week we talked about communication and conflict resolution. And this week we're going to talk about, and this is a little bit of not abstract, but I want to introduce this topic of thinking of our mental health as like a bank account, kind of how we think about our finances. And, I think, like, I consider stress, like every stressful situation that we deal with, I consider to be like a withdrawal from our bank account, right? So, you have a rough day at work, let's say that equates to a $50 withdrawal from your bank account. This morning, I was telling you guys, and listen, this is not the end of the world, but it's freaking annoying. My Facebook account got hacked. It was just like such a pain in the butt, and it's a little bit of an uneasy feeling. So I dealt with that for like a couple hours this morning, trying to figure that out. Like, I would say that was like a withdrawal from my emotional bank account, right? It took my time and energy, and I felt a little bit like just depleted afterward. On the other hand, like, we have things that we can do that can be considered deposits. And we've talked about a lot of these things. A deposit could be, going for a run, or having a healthy meal, getting a good night's sleep, doing a deep breathing or relaxation exercise, going for a walk, like all of these things that, you consider to be coping skills. maybe me going for a walk for half an hour, that's a $50 deposit that could make up for, the issue that I had this morning. So I think it's just a good way to kind of like keep tabs on where you're at, because a lot of people are walking around just like they do with their finances, not really like being cognizant of where it's at. So some people are in lots of financial debt, but they keep spending because they don't even know it. They just don't, or they don't care, right? And I think with our emotional health, a lot of people are just walking around not realizing like all of the withdrawals that they're making from their account and the fact they're in this emotional debt, and they are, that has its repercussions, right? If we're always walking around in emotional debt, well, that's going to take a toll on, often our physical health. Our, stress levels are going to be really high, which is, may impact our relationships, or, like there's all those downstream effects of being in that emotional debt. So I just wanted to, does that make sense the way I described that idea? This idea of looking at it as a bank account.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're taking out or you're putting in. So, and it makes perfect sense to me.
So let me ask you guys, and I know you kind of joked about where you were at, Mike, but let's talk about this. So I'm going to start with you. Where would you say your current balance is? If you had to just make up a number for where your emotional bank account is, where are you at?
I would say I'm on the plus side right now of it. I think April was a really, really tough month for me, personally and professionally. We at my house jokingly refer to May as Maycember, that it's like December, the rush of December with Christmas coming and holidays coming and the rush to get things done at work before you take that break. But May is like that for us, with my daughter's graduating from high school this month. My son's graduated from 8th grade this month. I have to coach like 18 games in like 16 days or something like that for baseball between the high school and Jack's team. It's really, really easy to lose track of where you're at, what day it is, what's going on when you're moving that quickly, So I think the one thing that I've been really lucky about and that I've learned, I think some of our listeners know that I battle rheumatoid arthritis, which is a really tough disease in a lot of ways. It's a inflammatory disease. It can be quite uncomfortable. Days where it's hot and humid that Dave loves, I hate. Those are days that I really struggle physically. And one of the things that I've learned and that my doctor has told me over the course of time is that if you don't learn to give your body a break, your body will do it for you. Something will happen, something will break down, and you'll be in a position where you have to kind of struggle to be able to move forward and figure the next things out. So I like to shift things into neutral. And one of the things that I do that I've sort of gotten in the habit of over the course of the last year is finding a time when other people might be doing other things, like around the house or at work or whatever, and then finding a time for me just to do what I would like to do, whether that be look at my Wordle, whether that be write my blogs. And I have a routine. Every morning I wake up before everybody else in the house is awake. I get the day set for my workmates at school. I put the plan out for the day and all that kind of stuff. And then I'll take a half an hour for myself and I will look at the scores, or I will start thinking about what I'm going to write about over the weekend and start laying out the template for that. I'll text you guys about something that I see on Twitter that looks like it's funny or that's baseball related, or a question that I might have for you to run past you on some of the fantasy stuff. And then on the weekends, on Saturday, no matter what, I'm up at 6 Central Time and I got the pot of coffee on, I got an Entenmann's donut, and I start cranking out on my routine. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, man, that's crazy. You're just too busy. You got too much you do too much. But I like that for me. It helps me stay grounded. It helps me, being busy is helpful for me as compared to some other people who might need like 7 or 8 hours of downtime. I don't know what to do with myself. And so that's me shifting into neutral. That's me being able to kind of have that me time where I start to rebalance the account. And one of the people that I learned that from, honestly, was Dave. because Dave and I, before Dave was on the show and Dave and I would talk fairly often, we were sending each other text messages at 5:30 in the morning that were baseball related. I was like, oh, wait, there's another guy that does things similar to like what I do, like is up before the crack of dawn, writing about things that nobody really wants to hear about, and up before the kids, the wife, and whatever. But that's kind of my recharge time. That's kind of my go time. And that's how I rebalance that account, because you guys know my job can be crazy. I don't want to say it on air, but I told you about the day that I had today, and it was a wild one, right? So I put that all off to the side. And when I do those things for me to be able to do the things that I like doing that are my hobbies and whatnot, that's where I get that rebalancing of the account for me. And to that, if I don't have that on a weekly basis, I feel lost without it. It's something that's a really important piece for me in that. I spent a lot of money on therapy back in the day when I was a younger man, and it was all money well spent. I think everybody can benefit from being in therapy, every single person I know. But for me, that is my therapy. That's my way of reconnecting with the things about me that I like, that don't have anything to do with work, that don't have anything to do with being dad or husband, but just being me in my element. And it brings me a joy that rebalances that account for me.
Awesome. Dave, where's your balance at right now? And, what are maybe some deposits that you can make to, because, like we don't even have to keep it just balanced. Like think about it from this angle too. Like we want to have a surplus in there, just like you do with your finances. Because things happen, right? The car, you need a repair on your car, for example. And that's especially nowadays, pretty much anything is like over $1,000 that you didn't expect to spend. Well, if you're just getting by, living paycheck to paycheck, well, that's going to really throw you off, right? That $1,000 expense. So again, extending this analogy even further, like if you're just getting by and you have, let's say, a big fight with your spouse, or a loved one passes away, like these are things that are really going to throw you for a loop if you don't have that buffer, right, to be able to handle them. So again, where are you at right now, Dave, and what are maybe some deposits that you can make moving forward here?
I am above zero. It's funny that you mentioned the car. That just this past 1 or 2 weeks ago, I had the catalytic converter stolen from underneath my car overnight. So
good times.
Yeah, it was $1,100 well spent, just like that. So it's just little things like that that they take from you. And I'm not talking money now. I'm talking about emotionally, things that you don't expect. But what really helps me to have those things in my savings is a lot of what you were saying, Mike, with, your morning routine. I am the same way. Monday to Friday, my routine is I am up early without anyone else who I dearly love, but I love my alone time.
Me too.
I love, that's when I do my writing for baseball, and I go to the gym every day. Some days I'm dreading it when I'm there, but it's at least there, and I'm giving myself the time that I need for myself, whether it be, an intense workout or just something quiet. It's something that I need. And my weekends too, I'm on a routine where, on a Saturday, maybe I'll hang out with the boys at the pool, or I'll do something for myself. Sundays, I usually love, if the weather's great, I'm either for a walk or a bike ride, or I'll end up at the gym for, I was talking to you a couple weeks ago, Chris, about going on those steams. It's just quiet time to myself. That helps me refresh and forget about life for a while. Gives me the time to be me. And like you said, Mike, I'm not a dad. I am not a husband. I'm not a teacher. In that moment, I am me. And when you get that me time, that's when you can give the best of yourself to everything else that needs it.
So you are Dave, the thief of joy, early in the morning, sending me notes about George Kirby being like near death. Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's the role that you take when you're not a dad, a teacher, a husband. You become the angel of death and just send us
angel of death
and make us sad.
Angel of death, thief of joy, Dave Funnel.
Exactly. Yep. You
I'm gonna
seem to
patent
really
that. Yeah.
revel in that. Yeah. So I just think it's something, it's kind of like a silly analogy that I thought of one day, but I feel like there is some benefit to thinking of our mental health in through this lens. And just, one last thing, like avoid, how like people, when they get into really bad debt, they go for like those payday loans that they
Oh,
have
yeah.
like 30-40% interest rate. It's like ridiculous. Well, I think there's something that's equivalent here to that. And for many people, it's alcohol, substances, gambling, like all of those vices, right? And not saying those are inherently bad. But I think a lot of people use them as a quote unquote payday loan, right? Because it gives you that instant relief,
Yeah.
right? But there is the interest that is, accumulating. So like if you're depending on alcohol to kind of get through and like restore your bank account, so to speak, that's going to eventually, right, if that becomes something that's a habit or something you just really depend on, that's going to have its own repercussions, right? You're accumulating interest in another way. So also something to think about. But we're going to leave it there for today. We'll be back next week. Hopefully, I think Kurt Hogue was a possibility for next week, talking Brewers. So we'll see if we could get that ironed out. But if not, either way, we'll be back with an episode next week. For Dave Funnell, for Mike Carter, I'm Chris Torres. Thank you so much for listening to the Fantasy Baseball Beat.